Welcome to Gossip About Gossip, powered by Hedera Hashgraph. In each episode, we'll cut through the hype of blockchain promises and explore real-world examples of organizations creating the next generation of decentralized applications, which will bring trust back to the internet for us all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Gossip About Gossip, the podcast where we talk about real-world applications of distributed ledger technology. My name is Zenobia Godschalk, and I'm the SVP of Communications here at Swirlds Labs, helping to grow the Hedera ecosystem. Today, I have a dynamic duo on. We are joined by Brandon and Jesse from Twigital. Hey, guys, how are you?
Good morning, Zenobia. Great to be here.
Doing great. Thank you, Zenobia.
Good. Okay, so Jesse, I think a lot of folks in the community know Brandon, so we're going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about Twigital and your role or both your roles there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us on. It's great to see you again. It's been a while. I guess people who are familiar with Hedera and who have been around for maybe 3 or 4 years or longer might know who I am. But I really sort of came from this community. So I'm an architect in real life, like a building architect, not a systems architect. And, you know, real world architects, I guess IRL architects or whatever, they have this thing where they always, especially on job boards and stuff, they would see, oh, architect, and they're so mad. Systems architects are not, you know, it's different. So everything kind of, when you use that term now, it's sort of jumbled up, but think building architecture, physical objects, things like that. That's sort of my background, and I came to Hedera because I was very interested in the technology, and especially with Lehman's sort of ethos and his delivery and his understanding and his background, and I just found it fascinating. Architecture and technology have always been two things that are closely married. Architects obviously use a lot of advanced software, and now everything really is moving to 3D. It's called building information modeling. So it used to be sort of with a pencil, then it was sort of in 2D on a computer. Now it's all 3D on a computer, and this is sort of very close to, the genesis of Twigital, because I've been a party to these evolutions throughout time, and so that's sort of my intro for a little background about myself. And the Hedera community is so wonderful, having been around 6 years now. It's hard to believe, but Brandon and I did a little show back in the day called Hedera Forum, which was wonderful. The Gossip About Gossip podcast is one of my favorites, of course. And before that, there was the Gossip Guy, who had sort of brought you the news about Hedera way back in the day. And for whatever reason, he sort of went away and his programming went away. So Brandon and I picked up the torch there, probably in 2017 or 18 or something like that. And then sort of took a step back because we were so enthralled with the technology and getting to meet with Mance and Lehman and interview them and stay close to all of this information. And so that's a little bit about Twigital and my role in the community.
All right. And so tell us exactly what is Twigital. I think a lot of people have probably seen it if they've been to any of the events where you've demonstrated it. I know a lot of folks have digitized items on it, but what is it and why is it sort of a unique offering, both in the Hedera community as well as sort of in the Web3 world?
Yeah, good question. So Twigital is a combination of words, I suppose, to form a novel word. Twigital is a software application that comes in the form of an iOS application right now. We have plans beyond that, of course. Twigital creates digital twins and tokenizes them all within the workflow of the application. We believe it's the first application of its kind. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're excited that we're doing it on Hedera as well. So it's really unique. It's unique in all of Web3. It's the only thing like it really in the world that we're aware of. And it's sort of being incubated right here on Hedera. And we think it's really important because, as I said in the intro, things are just kind of moving to 3D. Spatial computing environments are going to be really important. So we need to be thinking in 3D, and how do we really put this beautiful data structure that is this public distributed ledger and start thinking of it less in terms of just a spreadsheet, and more in terms of an environment, like Lehman would suggest, maybe shared worlds. So that's what Twigital is. It's an application that facilitates the creation of a digital twin and subsequently mints the resulting file to become the top asset of an NFT. And there's a lot more, but that's essentially boiling it down to these moving parts.
And, Brandon, we've heard a little bit from Jesse. I think everyone can sort of relate to architecture and architecture models and the need for that within that domain. But what was the need that you saw sort of more broadly, obviously encompassing, but also beyond just architecture?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it has an interesting response because Twigital was actually inspired by Lehman himself. The things that he would say things like, the world will be tokenized. Everything of value in the world is going to be tokenized. And I think our minds often go to, stable coins or securities, stocks, bonds, real estate. We've seen a lot of that on Hedera. Of course, digital art. We see that with NFTs. We've even seen information, right? With Hedera, we have the Hedera consensus service, and that's valuable as well. But we wanted to go and move into the physical realm. We wanted to empower the people that work in that physical realm, just like the people that were empowered, the digital artists were empowered with the first iteration of NFTs. We wanted to empower everybody else, the sculptors and artisans, craftspeople, manufacturers, collectors, everything else. We wanted to empower them with some of the same Web3 tools that those digital artists got. And that's kind of where it came from. So we knew that everything was going to eventually end up, or most things of value were going to end up. What about all those things that we treasure, that are on our display shelves, that are in museums, that our kids bring home from school? How could we capture those best? And we found with photogrammetry, that's the first step, the best way we could actually create these physical objects, where the physical objects or the objects themselves could represent themselves in these Web3 environments. So that's kind of the genesis of Twigital.
And Brandon, I want to go back for our audience. Can you explain what photogrammetry is?
Sure. So it's a process where you take anywhere from a few dozen pictures of an object to several dozen pictures of an object, and then there's a fair amount of heavy duty work that goes on the back end, which stitches all that together into a 3D object. It essentially is making a bunch of little polygons of the object in the shape of the object, and then paste little tiny pictures all around, so it ends up with this asset that looks exactly like the actual physical object that can be used in these digitally immersive environments.
All right. And so now you have this virtual object that you have created that looks very much like, like you said, it's the digital twin of what you have in the real world. Then what does, this Web3 enablement or this DLT enablement allow people to do with those precious things?
So we've gone down all kinds of different roads of different ways that it could be used. The first thing we think of is, since it's a good representation of the physical object, it could be used in Web3 marketplaces. It could be used for insurance, for documenting the physical condition of objects, for posterity. And you can just go on down the line. There's all kinds of different ways that we could see these being used. But, we're excited to see other ways it could be used as well. Jesse, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that this is the first thing of its kind, and we're just getting started. We're laying the foundation for what ultimately will be, a tangible 3D ledger environment, shared world. So you've got to start somewhere. Photogrammetry is one example of one way you can make a digital twin. It's our first product implementation, but this technology is becoming ever increasingly accessible. And with the hardware that we have in our pockets every day, also exponentially just having more power, we're going to shift the processing from these cloud environments right to the device. And what you'll find in the very near future is that any object that you would document with a photograph, or you would have documented via multiple photographs. So think of any object that's important enough that you want to take pictures of it from several angles to show somebody who's not in the room with the object. This won't exist anymore. Very soon, the barriers to entry to things like photogrammetry and other technologies will make it such that you can create a digital twin of your object, for most objects. Selecting an object is also important. This doesn't really apply to every single thing out there, but a great many of the world's objects. So that's the first thing. That's just going to happen. Twigital aside, this is where we're headed. So now, instead of taking this 2D photograph and emailing it to somebody, you're just going to send them the actual object. They'll be able to place it on the counter in front of them, look at it in AR, sort of mixed reality. Obviously, the Vision OS device coming from Apple and maybe the next few months is going to be a big step towards realizing something like that. So that's going to happen. So if you understand that that's going to happen, then you need to understand that you have to have a way of verifiably sort of tracking, just as you would a JPEG, these 3D objects. So first we have to create them. The best chance to tokenize them is at their point of creation, and that's really why Twigital will exist. So these 3D files are really fun to play with.
So it sounds like you have a long and very comprehensive product roadmap. Can you talk to us a little bit, Jesse, about how the development has gone so far?
Yeah, it's been great. I will say the Hedera SDKs are really easy to work with. I think those are well tested, and there's also a lot of great tooling. I should take an opportunity to thank a few people in the community who have really helped us along the way, especially early on. I want to thank Cooper Coons. He's been great, a great sort of technical advisor for us, helped us get started. And, Brandon and I don't come from this field, even though we've stayed close to information and we're very familiar with Hedera. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're familiar with building a decentralized application and all the things that go into it. So shout out to Cooper. Thank you so much. And then also people in the community, too many names to list, but anyone who's working on open source tooling of any kind for Hedera, Twigital is leveraging that. And so we plan to give back more to the community in that way, but especially the HIP standards, the way that NFTs work on Hedera is so unique, and it really gives Twigital a lot of its sort of its power. And Lehman would say, what you want to do is get to a point where you're improving these things because it's more secure, it's fair, it's more convenient. And that's what I understand will happen, is it'll be more convenient because these 3D objects will be compatible with the types of spatial computing environments that we are spending time in. A 2D photograph will not be compatible with the 3D spatial computing environment, whether that's a marketplace, a website, a shared world, a metaverse application, whatever you want to call it. It's rapidly approaching, but we still don't have a way to make the objects that populate these environments in a way that ties them to a ledger. So Twigital is just incredibly important as a utility. It's going to be that first step. You need to tokenize the thing if you want to bring it into this world, and then have the object sort of acting as an autonomous agent, and as it would be if it was tokenized. So
love to hear that. And Brandon, any surprises from your side along the way? A lot of the ins and outs of Hedera. Anything that, I guess for either of you, that you feel like, gosh, this was something I didn't know, or something I feel like others should know or I'd want to share?
Well, first of all, Hedera has made things very easy. Having the Hedera token service makes creating these assets so much easier. And not having to deal with smart contracts is really invaluable for something like Twigital. Second, we need a low barrier to entry for a completely new concept. As Jesse said, this is a completely new concept, not just within Hedera, but the entire crypto space. So having the really low fees for Hedera, that really low barrier is important to us as well, so people can actually get in there and use it. But other things that have surprised me, I always believed in Jesse's vision. This is Jesse's brainchild. I saw this. I put a lot of things on the back burner because I knew this was something that not just Hedera needed, but the entire Web3 space. But it wasn't until I actually got my hands on the app. Now, we've had the closed beta version of the app going back to what, Jesse? Back to February. And once I started actually creating these assets, all kinds of things started popping off in my head. I got really excited about it. I know, you remember the Starburst Juicyverse came out, and I was like, hey, I could do that in the real world. So me and my daughter sat there and glued a bunch of Starbursts together, made an HBAR H, and I went out in augmented reality and took some pictures. But at the same time, my wife got interested in it, and she actually used Twigital to capture a book that she had that she wanted to do a reel around. She does a lot of stuff on Instagram in the book community, in the literature community. And she created one of these 3D assets, and she wanted to make a reel, these short clips that you'll see on TikTok or you'll see on Instagram. And she brought it into augmented reality and dove into the book like she's diving into the book to read it. So it was a way that you could use these assets for influencers. And of course, Zenobia, you know Rob Allen very well. And Rob is with the Hashgraph Association, very active in the community, but he went off to Mount Everest Base Camp. And one of the things that we learned was you can't take rocks as a memento off because of regulations and things like that. So he, at the time, had our closed beta version of the app and was able to capture a rock that looked like a shark's tooth. Sharky Rob, he does a bunch of diving. Obviously, he's an adventurist, but he was able to bring that back in digital form, and we've been able to send that back and forth and show it off in all kinds of different digital environments. And fun fact, it was actually the very first thing that we created on Hedera mainnet and created a token from an asset. So that's what I've been surprised at in the very first iterations of Twigital, how people started to use the app. And now that it's available on the iOS App Store, we're even more excited to see how the rest of the community leverages these assets.
Very cool. So before we wrap up today, if you are able to share, what do you think the community should look for in the next 6 to 12 months out of y'all?
All right. Well, we hope to work with the community a lot to just onboard people, get them familiar with the process. Remember, we're just starting. This is the first product implementation. It's something that's novel, so it takes a little time. I promise that in the course of the coming, 12 to 24 months, like I said, the process of creating a digital twin will become much more familiar to everybody, especially everybody with an iOS device. So that's a little bit of a mountain to climb right now for some users, I think, because they've never heard of this, and it's a little bit like magic. And when you get it right, it is like magic. It's so great to create a convincing digital twin, and these things can be forensically analyzed, and they're just it's wonderful what you can do now. So I would say we'll help familiarize people with that process, and then of course we want to deliver a lot of tooling to the user. The iOS app is designed with the user in mind. It has been from the beginning. As somebody who's been a part of the Hedera ecosystem for going on 6 years now, I can count on one hand how many applications I feel are really designed with the user in mind and for the user to interact with in their real lives every day, not just as a tool for following some speculation or something. So I love to see that. Shout out Hashpack for leading the way and creating a beautiful application, and others. That's just one. But so Twigital is so happy to be among the group of live on mainnet applications, and that's a big hill to climb for us as well, to be in the App Store with an NFT enabled decentralized app. Is there's a lot of work to get to that point, let's say. So yeah, thank you so much. I can't wait. Obviously, we have a lot of people asking about Android. It's definitely in the roadmap. Web apps, definitely in the roadmap. Website, all of that good stuff. We're just getting started. So we hope you'll check out Twigital, give it a try, and come see us in Discord or on Twitter.
Yeah, and where do folks go if they want to, engage with it sounds like the beta at this point?
Yep. Well, it's out there, so just go search Twigital. I will warn you that Twigital, because it is this new word, this new idea, when you search Twigital in the iOS store, sometimes it autocorrects to digital. So you have to make sure you want Twigital. It'll come up the first one. It's free to use. Download it, play with it, make some cool NFTs. I love it, doing it with my kids' stuff, artwork, stuff that's not meant to last. You can preserve it that way. Have some fun with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to building the community around this. There's so many interesting ways, as I mentioned, to play around with it. Definitely go on YouTube. There's a guide on there. You search Twigital. I think it's going to be the first one again to pop up. But there's all kinds of other photogrammetry resources out there as well. So if you're having any trouble, check out those other resources that have been created on photogrammetry in general, and you'll get it dialed in pretty short order.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you will come back and keep us updated on your progress. And thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you, Zenobia. It was
Thanks,
our pleasure.
Zenobia. Appreciate it.